I'm working on legislation that I will introduce next week with Republicans and some Democrats. I think get all the Democrats. I hope I can get a good number of Republicans that will say the following. A special counsel cannot be fired when they were impaneled to investigate the president or his team unless you have judicial review of the firing. Not just for Trump, but for any future president. We need a check and balance here.
Joining us now, Paul Butler, law professor at Georgetown University and a former federal prosecutor, and Ron Klain is back with it. Ron, you served on the Senate Judiciary Committee where that bill Lindsey Graham's talking about would have to originate. What do you think the prospects for a bill like that are now?
You know, Lawrence, I think it's hard to say. I mean, you saw a lot of Senate Republicans speak out with personal loyalty to Jeff Sessions and outrage about the president's humiliation of Attorney General Sessions. But we haven't really seen the Republicans step up and defend the rule of law. And that's really what's at stake here. The president attacked Jeff Sessions for obeying the law and recusing himself. He attacked Jeff Sessions for not launching a politically based prosecution against Hillary Clinton. And the Republicans are saying, yeah, we love Jeff Sessions. Please keep Jeff Sessions around. But whether or not others will join Lindsey Graham to really try to ensure that the rule of law prevails here, I think, sadly, that's still an open question.
And Paul Butler, we are seeing a real change of tone this week with Republicans in the Senate, and it all begins with the president attacking a recent Republican senator. Once he attacked Jeff Sessions, Republican senators finally began to find their voice.
Yeah, so what President Trump values in an attorney general is not someone who's committed to equal justice under the law or the rule of law. If that's what he valued, he would never have chosen Sessions in the first place. Sessions is going to take us back to the Stone Age in terms of the administration of justice. Trump wants somebody who will obstruct the Russian investigation. He said that's his big beef with Sessions, that he's not playing. He didn't pledge that loyalty. So now he wants an attorney general who will. If Sessions steps aside, he gets to name an acting attorney general who can get to the special counsel. And it's true, Lawrence, we're hearing from some Republicans, but we're not hearing from the people we need to, the congressional leaders, Ryan and McConnell. What they need to say is, Mr. Trump, if you fire or get rid of, make him resign Sessions, you will be drafting your own articles of impeachment. That's obstruction of justice. And they're not saying that. And so the concern is that he'll do that. Trump will make Sessions leave office and get to Mueller, and the Republicans won't do a darn thing.
Ron, what I like about what Paul just said is he actually used legal language, articles of impeachment. These are, and you heard Lindsey Graham today say, you know, if President Trump did that, it would be holy hell. Well, you know, that's religious imagery. There's nothing legal in that phrase. That leaves me wondering, what exactly would you do, Senator Graham? What does that mean?
Yeah, and what we've seen so far is what the Republicans have done at outrage after outrage is a big fat nothing. And, you know, and that's the concern I think that Paul's raising that I agree with. And it is great that Senator Graham says he's going to draft a bill that will have some kind of insulation from removal of the special counsel. But again, it's not clear which Republicans will support that and if they have the votes. And in the meantime, I think the spectacle of the Attorney General going on Fox TV to essentially grovel for his job is a scary spectacle. The president called him weak. He called the president strong. And the question is, will the Attorney General now be cowed into launching some of these prosecutions that Trump wants against leakers, trying to undermine the structure of the Justice Department in any way? I mean, I think that's the scary thing. Is Trump's pressure on Sessions having an effect on how Sessions runs the Justice Department?
Paul, you've worked in the Justice Department. What is your impression about what something like this would do to the operations of the Justice Department? And, of course, we recognize we've never seen anything like it, and nothing like this happened when you were working there.
You know, I was so proud to do public corruption prosecution for the Department of Justice, and some of my friends were skeptical. They say, oh, it was political, but it wasn't at all. I served under Republican and Democratic presidents, administrations, and we always said if we had the evidence, we'd bring the case. The president didn't get involved. Often the Attorney General didn't get involved either. It was career decisions, and now we're seeing a whole politicization or a desire by the President of the United States to politicize the Department of Justice, the FBI. He does not understand. The Attorney General does not represent him. The Attorney General's loyalty is to the American people.
Paul Butler and Ron Klain, thank you both for joining us tonight.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.